Welcome to the Hope in Real Life podcast with Jason Gore. Our team is passionate and committed to bringing you more hope in the everyday, real areas of your life. If this conversation and content is valuable for you, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and even share. You never know how valuable it could be to share a little bit of hope with someone else. Let's get the conversation started. What's going on, Hope in Real Life family? We are here on this episode to talk about a topic that I know all of us could use a little bit more of in the area of self-control. And so I thought it would be a great idea to bring on the show this week my co-host, David Goggins. So David, welcome. So glad. No, okay. So David,
right, so David, shave my hair, and every other word needs to be a cuss word, and I need to look like I hate everybody.
David couldn't make it. Apparently, he hasn't watched the podcast yet, and so we're stuck. Just kidding. We are here with my good friend Bradford Mitchell. Bradford,
hey,
we're talking about self-control, huh?
I know. I don't know if I should be able to talk about this, to be
Oh,
honest.
come on. You got plenty of self-control. Look, I'll start out. I'll ask you. You can ask me. No, you know what? I'll ask you. Self-control. What is self-control?
Man, we were talking beforehand, so I looked it up because I was a little confused myself. Because it seems like it's kind of like a self-help kind of thing, you know? Like it's like a new year, so practice self-control. I don't know. I think self-control, I looked this up, like I said, and it's more like in the moment, like the ability to not react in a way that is not favorable. It's kind of vague, but that's kind of the point, right? So like dessert, like if you're trying to not eat a lot of bad things, self-control is in the moment. You're like, I'm not going to touch that. Yep. And I do not exercise that. Yeah. You put a pint of Ben and Jerry's in my freezer, it's gone.
Yeah. So, big ice cream fan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time on the show, Lance Crump was stating that Chick-fil-A dumps all of their chicken into vanilla ice cream before they fry it. He was so confident they do that. I've never heard of it before, never heard of it since. Who knows? But, I mean, Ben & Jerry's is good ice cream. Yeah, I think with self-control, what you got to realize is it's not a thing that, like, you can expect someone to have if they've never thought about the specific situation that they find themselves in. Like, for example, if someone doesn't know ice cream is bad for them, you can't expect them, you can't actually exhibit self-control against the ice cream. That you might be doing something that's bad, but if somebody's driving a car and they were speeding, but they didn't know they were speeding, that's not necessarily a self-control issue. Self-control comes into play like when we've already done the work or someone has communicated to us, hey, this is a decision that you should make or should not make.
That's good.
And then you get in that situation, and then you got a decision to make. Are you going to exhibit self-control or not? But I think there's the continuum of, or the axis line of knowing what you should do. And then there's also this other axis of the environment that you're in. Mm-hmm. Because the more difficult the environment you find yourself in, the harder it is to exhibit self-control. And so, for example, say hypothetically, I had children that were obeying everything that I asked them to do.
Is this actually not hypothetical?
It takes a little bit of self-control to not raise my voice.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Especially if they only do one thing wrong or even two things wrong. But if the environment changes, and if all three kids have not gone to bed 45 minutes after I've asked them to go to bed,
it'd be hard.
My environment changes. And so now my need for self-control actually increases.
Yeah.
And so I think in a situation where you know your desired outcome in a specific environment is kind of the realm where this idea of self-control is necessary.
You mentioned your kids, and they're all teenagers, right?
I had to think about it, yes. 16, 16, and 13.
So my son is 4, and this is kind of like you were talking about, like if you don't know, is it self-control? So my son is 4,
right?
And he'll just throw his toys sometimes, and he's having fun,
right?
But he doesn't. I have to teach him that,
right?
So that's what made me think about it, because it's like I have to teach him, hey, we don't throw toys. Like you're going to break something, you're going to destroy the house, you may hurt your little sister, because he doesn't know his 4-month-old sister is just on the other side of the room with him, like he could hurt her,
right?
And so that's exactly what I thought of. It's like we have to, certain things you have to be taught or like explained.
Yep.
That's a whole nother layer to this conversation
Yep.
too. It's just like, well, so how do you get to the point where you understand where self-control is needed?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, just being honest in my own life, this is something that I think by a lot of measures, self-control, discipline, we can talk about that in a minute and how those play out. But
Yeah.
I want to recognize right out of the gate, it's not something that comes natural and easy all the time. I mean, I know for me in my life, if things are going well, it's much easier to remain self-control, to remain self-controlled, to love my wife well, to talk about my kids, to interact in a healthy way with my kids, to stay in a healthy pattern of working out, eating the right foods. But man, I mean, you go through a tough week, a tough day, a tough week, tough couple months, tough few years. That's self-control. I mean, my personal, I can tell you from learned experience, my self-control drops. You go through a season where, hey, leading in the context of the church where I serve and lead, and you throw in your dad getting sick and then him passing away. And then like I have found more difficulty in those environments actually sticking to my self-control, which then I think leads to what you would say disciplined or undisciplined. And it's a fight.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, depending on the environment you find yourself in.
Yeah. It's like there's a difference between, for me, like self-control, like I mentioned, Ben and Jerry's. It's like, that's a small thing. It's like self-control is like, if it's in the house, then like I have to exercise more self-control than if I just don't buy it. And it's easier to not buy it because if you're not like having Walmart deliver your groceries to you in 2025, you're missing out, because my wife and I gained so much time back because we don't have to go to the grocery store.
You guys don't just like enjoy going to Walmart and walking around and
I do
sitting
not.
in the register?
That
That's
does
shocking.
not.
Absolutely shocking.
But you see, here's the thing. This is like a little hack. Like, we think, what do we need? And like, this is really minor because enjoy yourself every once in a while. Have ice cream. But like the principal overarching thing,
unless you're
like,
lactose intolerant.
well, I guess they have lactose-free ice cream. I don't think it tastes very good, though.
All right.
But you could.
I cut you off.
No,
Go
it's
ahead.
all right. But like, don't put yourself in an environment. There are certain things you can do and you can avoid. Don't put yourself in an environment where you would have to practice self-control. You could just avoid those areas. The way I avoid it is just my wife and I discuss what we need. She puts in the grocery order, and I don't say ice cream. And if I do, she looks at me because she's like, she knows I've asked her to help me not buy ice cream.
Right.
I do not. If it's there, it's gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're talking about something stupid like ice cream, but I think overall, the principle holds true. Is like, if there's an area in your life where you need to practice self-control, what can you do to not put yourself in a situation where you don't have to find that you're like, now I have to maintain self-control. Like, if certain things send you off, what can you do to avoid those things?
Right. I think that's that axis of environment.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are some environments that we can control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're an alcoholic, like, hey, here's a good way to not have to worry about your self-control. Don't go hang out at bars.
Don't go to a bar.
Right. And so the problem is we don't always get to control our environment.
No, there
Right.
definitely
Sometimes
areas.
things happen to us. But I do think it's worth noting, neuroscientists would tell you, and I'm not going to remember the part of the brain, but there is a part of our brain that when we exhibit self-control, when we do hard things that we don't necessarily want to do, when we resist things, or when we do things that we want to do, that part of the brain, it operates like a muscle. It actually gets stronger.
Wow.
Like, so the more hard things you do or the more self-control you exhibit, the easier it is to exhibit self-control the next time. And the opposite is true. The more you give in to the hard things, the more times you go to the freezer for that ice cream, the more that you give into raising your voice at your kids or whatever it is that we're talking about. I mean, alcoholism, pornography, I mean, you name it, not going to the gym. The more days you have in between of not going to the gym, the harder it's going to be. And so controlling your environment and getting the small wins is actually a big step to getting to a healthy place. When these hard things do happen and you can't control the environment anymore, now you have the ability to remain self-control, at least a higher likelihood of remaining in control
Having
what's,
self-control.
having self-control,
Yeah.
exhibiting self-control in the moment.
Yeah. No, that's that. We talked about like back before Christmas and Thanksgiving, we talked about like if you're in an environment you can't change, for example, like you have to spend time with family sometimes.
Right.
You got to exhibit self-control.
Yep.
That's going to be hard. That's the exact first thing it means. So if you're interested in something like that, that episode, we talked about like making it through the holidays. It's a little, it's a different topic, but this is like kind of broaching in. That's just something I thought of.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to break it down. And I would say if somebody were to say, so what are some of the keys to growing in self-control? You got to look at it like, how do I win the small battles?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because those small battles stack up over time. And then again, you get stronger. So I don't even know that I would say to someone, you should decide I'm never going to have ice cream ever again in my life. Well, that's great. But what happens when your environment changes? You get a little depressed. You know, some people love to go shopping for a dopamine rush. Some people are going to turn to food. We all have our vices, right? And so, but if you can decide, no, I'm just going to win this small battle and I'll fight the next battle the next time it comes up, again, that's going to increase your strength. And then, you know, we were even talking before the show about what's the difference in self-control and discipline. Discipline is really more of a lifestyle. Like you can't, you can say I exhibited self-control. If you were one who exhibits continuous self-control over a consistent period of time, that's really starting to get closer to your definition of discipline. Yeah. You know, there's a pattern there. And so that's what, like, I think self-control over time is what leads to actual true discipline. And that's why we got to focus on how do we win the small battles along the way.
Yeah, I did a couple things in my life, and if any of my like friends who are listening may be like, Bradford, we've heard this is annoying. But at one point I was like, I needed to figure out how to have my life a little more structured. And I didn't know, I was just like, something just felt off, and I just didn't feel like I felt like I was constantly reacting. Yeah. And I did two things. At one point I said, I'm going to floss every single night because people be like,
you're eating ice cream, you have to.
Yeah, well, people could be judging me right now, but if everybody's honest, I think most people go several days, weeks without flossing, and I was one of those people. And I was like, I'm going to dedicate and be intentional about it. And it's crazy how when I did it every single night, I didn't realize this, but like how my like making the bed every single morning, how like those small things that take like 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever, how that really helps shift my thought process on achieving other things. Like if you're trying to make this goal to be disciplined or maintain self-control and like these really big things, like you're kind of like diets, for example, like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Yeah. But the other thing I did though was like I committed to going to the gym every day. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I started my day that way for 2 weeks, even when I didn't want to. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did was every morning it was exhibiting self-control to not hit snooze and just be like, I'll go after work. Because I knew I'd get done with work and I'd be like, it's 5:30. There's a million people here. I just drove 45 minutes home. I just had a long day. Like I'm not in the right mindset, all this stuff. So in those moments, I was exhibiting self-control. But then I found it was kind of crazy. And this may work for other people because like maybe not everyone. I found like after 2 weeks of committing, I was like, I'm going to do this. Like I'm going to do it. And I'm not normally that like self-motivated. And it was crazy how that really changed my perspective. Cause now I'll wake up at 4 if I need to. I wake up at 5 and like I start my day that way. And it helps me because then I'm not reacting. A little different like path we could go down. But I felt like when I was waking up at like the last possible minute to get to ready to go to work, I was like all flustered and I was showing up and I just was not in the right mindset. And so putting like discipline in some area that wasn't working out at 5 a.m. is not something that will really alter the big scope of my life. It was more for me, right? Yeah. But then it helped me in areas like interacting with other people when I worked, like interacting with my wife. And now we have our 2 kids. And so it's like, it helped me to maintain discipline and self-control, like in some area that was more personal. If I can do that first, it helped me when I interacted with others. And I don't think people always think about that. They're like, other people are more important. And I would agree with that. But like, you need to have your life in order because then you can actually you're talking about your environment with your kids, you know, asking 4 and 5 times or whatever. So I don't know, that was just like a small thing that really helped me a lot.
Hope in Real Life family, I want to take a moment and let you know about a resource that we have for you for your own personal development, spiritual enrichment, and really a way for you to find a bit more hope in real life. We have a tool for you called the Hope in Real Life app. It offers things like parenting tips, financial resources, marriage insights. If you're looking for it, there's even Bible reading plans in there. And there's a community where you can even share prayer requests and know that someone is praying for you for whatever it is that you have going on in your life. It's available right now in the Apple App Store or in Google Play. You can search Hope in Real Life in both stores, or you can use the download link that is in the show notes. Remember, tomorrow can be better than today, and hope is possible even in real life. Yeah, I think we want to pay attention here too to like, okay, so what if I've thought about it? What if I have practiced some self-discipline? I've done some small wins, but then I do find myself in a situation where I'm still tempted, right? And the hard part is we live in a world right now that tells us you do you. We live in a world right now that says, hey, if you think ice cream's good for you, and again, we're clearly using ice cream as a metaphor here, but if you think this is good for you, why not do it? It's your life. You do you. Whatever's true for you is true for. And the reality is, like, it's not really the case. I mean, decisions that we make have consequences, and so if we go in the area of ice cream, if we decide to eat ice cream, that's on a regular basis, ongoing, not knocking ice cream. We'd love to have a sponsorship by Ben & Jerry's and Breyers.
The
and
Tonight
the whole
Dough.
deal.
Please, Lord Jesus.
But man, you've got to spend time thinking through what are the consequences of going down this road. And I mean, you even deal with this. I mean, you read scripture, you read the Bible, like there are consequences to the actions that we take. And so pausing in a moment in an environment, or even before you go into an environment, and thinking through, okay, I do know this is what I want to commit to, but this is what's going to happen if I don't go to the gym. This is what's going to happen if I don't exhibit self-control and I do yell at my kids. I mean, all kinds of studies, the likelihood of them raising their voice at their kids. For my daughter, the learned behavior of, hey, a man should yell at me if he loves me. Well, that's not really true. Yeah, no. And so, but if I think through those implications, well, now it's a little easier to have the self-control that I need in my moment. And so recognizing, just because the world tells us, hey, you can do your own thing, like you can, but there are going to be consequences. And so if you're looking to grow in self-control, find a way to win the small battles, and then think through the implications of actually not being self-controlled in the moment. Yeah. I mean, for me, getting up and going to the gym, I don't always feel self-controlled to do that, but I also know I want to walk my daughter down the aisle one day. I also know that I don't want to be 55, 65, 75 years old and not be able to play around on the ground with my grandkids. And so I think through that stuff. I mean, and seriously, it's legitimately for me, like, hey, you don't want to be fat and out of shape. Get up and be self-disciplined and go to the gym.
Well, so, and what you're saying is also like, your decisions never only affect you. Like, the only way that's going to happen is if you live on an island isolated by yourself. Yeah. Everything you do plays into how you interact with other people.
Yeah, but come on, Brad. You have to admit, though, in order for that to even matter, you got to care about other people.
There's that
Which
too.
is my point. I think we're not even really told we need to be mindful of other people. It's more like, what is your truth? And then you go live that out. And then social media and like it puts us in these microcosms where we just all really like the same things. And we can say that we care about other people in our unity together. But at the end of the day, I'm just telling you, when I listen to most arguments on that stuff, I have no idea how we got here. It just sounds like you got a bunch of people that care more about a unified personal preference than a unified outcome. And so anyways, you're exactly right. We do need to think through that. But that's another piece at the beginning. Like, self-discipline means you've actually thought through the impact of the decision that you make. And so that means one of the like areas of impact is I care how this is going to impact other people. Yeah. So you do got to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
How about instant gratification? I gotta, making this decision is not going to give me the joy, the pleasure, the dopamine rush that I know I can receive right now. How do you deal with that?
To go back to the ice cream analogy, I'll go and I eat it and I feel like I eat the whole thing and I'm like, I feel good. but then the next morning I do not.
Yeah.
So it goes back to what you were just saying, like thinking through things before you make a decision or you react. And it's not something people want to hear. And I'm realizing I'm 35 and I still don't feel like I should be like, we had my kids, my son. I still remember the day we walked out of the hospital was the day North Carolina went on lockdown in 2020.
Yeah.
Cops everywhere. We were at Duke. And so we couldn't, if people know that area, we were sitting in the front with my truck and I was trying to get the car seat in, and like they were just wanting us out of the parking lot. And I was like, do you not care that I'm trying to put a kid in a car seat for the very first time in my life?
Yep.
He's like 3 days old. And I'm like, I say that to say like, how old was I then? 31. And I was like, nobody cares nobody wants to check in to make sure I'm capable of caring for a child.
Yeah.
Like the cop didn't care anything about the fact that,
Right.
so I still have a hard time getting my mind wrapped around the fact that I'm an adult. And like my parents, when they come to my house, my mom opens the freezer and sees like, Bradford, why are there 4 pints of ice cream in there? That would be what my mom would say when I was 10. You're not eating 4 pints of ice cream.
Right.
Like that's what she does. But now it's all on me.
Yeah.
And so you need people in your life also. That's what I'm getting at. Like when you're young, it's like your parents or your parental figure, something like that. When you're older, that's why it's important to have people in your life to speak into you, because you need to work on yourself, but like you need people who call you on your stuff.
Right.
And if like, hey, that wasn't the best reaction to that person that bumped into you on accident.
Right.
Like, hey man, I thought you were trying to be on a diet.
Yeah,
why are you pounding ice cream?
All the more reason, right, in life to make sure, and that's probably another, another variable to add to the question, which is accountability. Like, who do we have in our lives?
Well, that's a whole nother episode.
Because you got parents, like you said, you got parents when you're younger. Maybe you got teachers. Maybe you got coaches.
Yeah.
Who largely those people go into those professions because they care about the development of young people. Mm-hmm. You get older, and maybe you have a spouse. Or you have a boss. But if we're honest, most bosses are more concerned with the bottom line, not necessarily people development. It shouldn't be that way, but that's kind of the way it works out. And so another thing you can do if you want to increase your likelihood of having self-control is checking in and making sure that you're putting people around you in your life that are actually going to encourage you in the directions that you want to go in. I mean, I don't know who said it and if I even say it the right way, but it has been said, as I've said many times, the people, you're going to be some degree of summation of the top 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with in your life. And so are they holding you accountable? Are they encouraging you in the right direction?
Is that Carnegie guy?
I have no idea.
What is it? How to win friends and influence people? Is that him?
That
sounds right.
That sounds right.
That sounds
sure.
Smart.
He can get credit
I've
for it
read
too.
books.
But I mean, I've always said
Carnegie?
it too. So I don't know. Since I've heard it, I've always said it. Here's why this is important. Why should we talk? We probably should have said this up at the top. And a lot of people have said a different version of this. I think the most recent version I heard was from Joe Rogan. But we live in a world right now because of the you do you thing, which sounds so strong. I'm going to make my own decision for me, and I know best for myself. But the reality is when we start leaning into that self-control muscle gets weaker, and we start thinking things like, well, I don't even think I need to work as hard as somebody else thinks I need to work. I've worked hard for a while. I can slack a little bit. I can take some time. And in today's world right now, and again, Joe Rogan said some version of this, like all you really got to do to be better than probably the average person around you is just show up every day and put in the bare minimum. I mean, if you do that, you're going to be above average in today's world. And like, even with our kids, man, my wife and I talk about it. Like, we work so hard to instill discipline, to instill self-control in their lives, help them understand, hey, here's how small wins every day stack up. This is how it makes it easier for you long-term to live a disciplined life. Because we know in today's world, like, if you can take a highly motivated, highly disciplined person, man, it's not that hard I want to be careful what I say, but we're not trying to kick other people's butts, but to kick most people's butts around you when it comes to being productive and adding value to wherever it is that God's placed you. And so not that it's about kicking somebody else's butt, but to achieve the things that you're actually capable of in your life and help other people rise and experience what it is that's the best for them. Yeah. And so there's just so few people that really get this right. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like I said, the culture of, hey, do whatever feels best for you. And it's like, well, that's probably not what's best for you over the long haul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
So on our run sheet here, it has a little space to talk about like how wisdom and self-control isn't necessarily something that we can do on our own, relying on God's strength. In the Bible, self-control is talked about as one of the fruits of the Spirit, a part of the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And, what this is referencing is if we get to a place in our lives where we decide to follow Jesus, the Bible tells us that we are then indwelt with the Holy Spirit. So that means by the Spirit's power, we would have the ability to actually live out those areas as a part of our lifestyle. That changes though based on like how we're filled with the Spirit, like whether we're walking with the Lord or not. And so it is worth recognizing if you are a follower of Christ or if you are trying to grow in these areas, in our own strength, we ain't going to get it done.
No.
Like the idea
I don't
of
know how people who don't follow Jesus exhibit those things.
Yeah. And so like there is an aspect of this that has some dependency on God. And so recognizing that and turning to Him for self-control, man, if there's an area in our lives where we're struggling, like we have a loving Father that wants us to go to Him, just like I want my kids to come to me and say, Dad, I'm struggling in this area. Yeah. I need help. I need accountability. I need encouragement. And we have a loving Father who longs for us to go to them. And the truth is, when my kid comes to me, I don't necessarily tell him anything that he doesn't already know.
Yeah. Yep.
I just put my arms around him. I say, I love you. I remind him of the trade-offs that he might be facing. And I encourage him and I remind him, just like God would say, no, you're filled with the Spirit of God. You can do that. I would say, hey, you're a strong young man. You're a strong young woman. You can do this. Yeah. We can do this together. And that's really, you're not waving a magic wand over somebody and now giving them a superpower. But man, going to God with that, it's in His presence. It's in this desiring to be filled with the Spirit of God and recognizing, no, we do have the Spirit of God inside us. We do have the ability to make the decisions that we need to make in our lives.
Yeah. You said, this is what I've likened it to too. And you brought this up. You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Right.
Is one of those people Jesus?
Right.
And I don't mean to get cheesy with it because so many people would think that's the direction, but it's like we make time for and spend money on the things that are important to us.
Yeah.
If you're having a hard time with self-control, cheat code, you don't have to worry about it if you are seeking Jesus daily and you're trying to replace fleshly desires, worldly things, the things that the world says are important or that matter. If you're replacing them and you're replacing those thoughts with what the Bible says. Yeah. And it's kind of like, that's a good place to start. Like if you don't know where to start trying to gain self-control, I'd say stop eating ice cream.
Does anybody else think that we need to get Bradford in a rehab facility? Anybody else?
I'm probably going to
Thou
stop
dost
by
protest
Walmart.
Too much.
I'm going to stop by Walmart on the way home, grab a few pints, but spend time with God. Make that your first thing. Yeah.
So look, I probably need to wrap this thing up. Here's what I would say. Self-control is a cheat code to ending up where we want to end up in life.
Yeah.
Period. Point blank. If we can have self-control, we're going to move in the direction that we want to move. If we can't, we're probably not. You're leaving a lot up to luck and chance. And to be honest, that's not a great investment strategy. And so out of all the things we've talked about, I think one, we've got to watch our environment. Okay, the environment that we put ourselves in is going to make having self-control easier or more difficult. We got to focus on winning the small battles along the way. That is going to strengthen our ability and our confidence in ourselves to make the right decisions when we get in those moments. We've got to stay consistent over time. We win the small battles and then stay consistent over time. That's what's going to over time lead us to a life of discipline. And then look, it gets tough. We need to turn to our loving Father. We need to have other people around us in our lives along the way. And I think if we can just get our hearts and our minds set on those things, I think we're well on our way to living a more self-disciplined life.
Yeah, that's good. This was good.
Yeah, good talk.
I'm motivated. I'm not going to stop by Walmart to get ice cream on the way home.
Hope in Life family, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Look forward to seeing you on the next. We would love for you, if this is beneficial content, like, subscribe, share. That helps us get the word out to other people. You know you've got somebody in your life that could benefit from a bit more self-discipline. And so I want to encourage you, share it with them and let us know who you shared it with. Tag them on social media as well. We are thankful that you are here with us and that we could be alongside of you for the journey of looking for a bit more hope in our everyday lives.
Absolutely.
Until next time, see you soon. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hope in Real Life podcast. If this content was valuable for you, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. You never know how important it could be to bring a little hope into someone else's life. There's even a place here for you to comment. We would love to hear from you and hear your feedback. Until next time, let's keep sharing hope.